The Great Bengal Famine during the Second World War, when 4 million people died because Winston Churchill, deliberately as a matter of written minuted policy, proceeded to divert essential supplies from civilians in Bengal to sturdy Tommies and Europeans as reserve stockpiles. He said that the starvation of anyway underfed Bengalis mattered much less than that of sturdy Greeks. This is Churchill's actual quote. And when conscience-stricken British officials wrote to him, pointing out that people were dying because of this decision, he peevishly wrote in the margins of the file, "Why hasn't Gandhi died yet?"
Okay, Bengal Famine. So a neat little story here by Tharoor. Right, the people who actually researched the Bengal Famine say it's really, really fucking complex. Or we can just go with Mr. Tharoor, the Indian politician, who says,
because Winston Churchill, deliberately as a matter of written minuted policy, proceeded to divert essential supplies from civilians in Bengal.
Yeah, Churchill bad. There you go. That's a much simpler explanation. Churchill bad, and Churchill did it. Forget all the detailed analyses by historians about this event. Tharoor figured out Churchill bad. But regarding the Bengal Famine, just look at how complicated it is to tease out cause on that one issue. These backward practices to persist in India that were being phased out in other parts of the empire. I know Tharoor loves to shit on Churchill, but another reason for the Bengal Famine being as bad as it was is that some provinces of India had export limits on how much grain they could sell to other provinces, and an export duty on grain being sold to other provinces within the Raj itself. If you wanted to sell grain to Bengal, you had to pay an export duty. I mean, it's a joke, really. By the time of Indian independence, they had well over 400 million people. But the claims of genocide really boil down to specific events. Now, here's just an excerpt from how Wikipedia describes the causes of the Bengal Famine. Quote, "Debate about the causes of the famine covers complex issues in an attempt to assign culpability, whether to natural forces, market failure or malfeasance of governmental institutions, war profiteering, or other unscrupulous acts by private businesses. The questionable accuracy of how much the available statistical data is a complicating factor, as is the fact that the debate and their conclusions are both political and politicized. The issue on the degree of the crop shortfall in late 1942 and its impact in 1943 has dominated the historiography of the famine. The issue reflects a larger debate between two perspectives. One emphasizes the importance of food availability decline, FAD, and another as a cause of the famine, and another focuses on the failure of exchange entitlements, FEE. The FAD explanation blames famine on crop failures brought on specifically by crises such as drought, flood, or man-made devastation from war. The FEE account argues that such external factors are in some cases important, but holds up that famine is primarily the interaction between pre-existing structural vulnerabilities such as poverty and a shock event such as war or political interference in markets that disrupts the economic market for food. When these interact, some groups within society can become unable to purchase or acquire food even though sufficient supplies are available. Both the FAD and FEE perspectives would agree that Bengal experienced at least some grain shortage in 1943 due to the loss of imports from Burma, because the Japanese had invaded Burma, damage from the cyclone, and brown spot infestation. However, FEE analysis do not consider the shortage the main factor, while FAD-oriented scholars such as Browick, 1986, hold that a sharp drop in food supply was the pivotal determining factor. Togger of 2003 and Padmanabhan, 1973, in particular, argue that the impact of brown spot disease was vastly underestimated, both during the famine and in later analyses. The signs of crop infestations by the fungus are subtle. Given the social and administrative conditions at the time, local officials would very likely have overlooked them. Academic consensus generally follows the FEE account as formulated by A. Sen. I don't know the full name of that man. And A. Sen, 1977-1981A, in describing the Bengal famine of 1943 as an entitlements famine. On this view, the prelude to the famine was generalized wartime inflation, and the problem was exacerbated by prioritized distribution and abortive attempts at price control, but the death blow was devastating leaps in the inflation rate due to heavy speculative buying. This in turn caused a fatal decline in the real wages of landless agricultural workers, transforming what should have been a local shortage into a horrific famine. And it just goes on and on and on like this, and this is probably 1/4 of the discussion section, just the discussion section, just sort of the 1/4 of 1/5 of the Wikipedia article on this topic.
Staying with India, between 15 and 29 million Indians died of starvation in British-induced famines.
Now, this is really easy to respond to. Just like all other European colonies, the population of India exploded under company rule and Raj rule. In fact, the inflection point of Indian population growth occurred around 1500, i.e. when the Portuguese started setting up coastal forts and trading stations. And from then onward, the population of India continued to grow at an unprecedented rate. In fact, the population grew so fast, and this gets to a more basic problem with the way people like Thoreau explain history and world affairs. That is, he operates in these little stories and anecdotes and pieces together a kind of gestalt about what happened from the bits and scraps that he reads, and instead of literally just looking up basic facts and figures. And everything Thoreau says is like this. So he makes a glib little statement, usually with some quote. Okay, some guy said something mean about Indians, and he makes this glib little statement about an enormous topic of research, and then he just leaves it in the dust and moves on to the next glib talking point. Right, Gish Gallop, if there ever was one. It should be called the Thoreau Gallop. And he doesn't deal in big aggregate data about the matter. When I present these large numbers on population, GDP, land under cultivation, industrial production, it's the big picture. This is, broadly speaking, what is going on. And any story about some specific event, such as the Bengal Famine or something that was said to have been a massacre, that's like a little extra credit. That's just like a little garnish on top of the big picture of what was actually happening. Little specific events are, first off, profoundly unimportant once you know the basic structure of what happened, the basic population and economic facts and trajectories.
Donkey Desi American Professor. Jai Hind, and God bless America.